They called the Ethelgard a tomb that was floating, a ship that is worth more as scrap than as a ship. For 47 years, she drifted through the cold, quiet void of space, forgotten by all the species that had once feared her name. Nobody even bothered to bid when the salvage auction put her up for 12 credits. We were the only ones who did. We bought this ghost for a few dollars, not because we wanted her metal. We didn't buy her weapons. We bought her because when we first scanned her hull, we found something deep inside her corrupted alien databanks that made all of us go quiet. A voice from a mother, telling her daughter a story before bed. They told us to melt her down. This was recorded 60 years ago on a ship that was never meant to be a home. They said that the dead don't care about monuments. But we chose differently when we saw that rusty bridge and those empty stations where a whole crew used to live, laugh, and love. This is the story of how we bought a ghost ship for almost nothing and found out that her true worth was something that the galaxy had forgotten how to measure. The Galactic Salvage Authority's weekly catalog listed the auction on page 912. Many stopped at page 50. The best always came first. Off-service frigates with working engines, trucks with functional storage bays, mine platforms with working drill arrays. Large salvage companies bid on those prizes using automated bidding and secret deals. Their trash is on page 912. Jake Morrow nearly missed it. In the Turum office of Morrow & Sons Salvage on the outer ring of Theta Station, he ate cold noodles from a plastic container and browsed the catalog on a broken tablet. His boots were on the desk. The chair where he hung his jacket had a broken wheel. The fluorescent light above him buzzed and flickered every 30 seconds. Like a Morse code message, he was about to put the catalog away and go to bed when his thumb slipped on the greasy screen and turned 300 pages. There, it was. Lot number 7741. One retired ship. Tempest class, Corvathi Dreadnought. Name Ethel. Not working. No crew. Status, abandoned. Outer sector 44 Echo drift path. The minimum bid is 12 credits. Jake stopped eating. 0.12 credits. A bad sandwich at Theta Station cost that. A half-charged power cell at the discount rack cost that much. It was nothing. That was far from nothing. The Galactic Salvage Authority refused to tow it to a junkyard. Taking a long look at the listing, Dreadnought Corvathi. The name was known. Each salvager knew the name. Corvathi were one of the galaxy's oldest races. They made warships while other people learned to make bronze tools. Dreadnoughts were famous. Huge ships, almost 2 kilometers long, made of a tougher layered alloy than humans had ever made. One Corvathi dreadnought could defeat a fleet, but the Corvathi War ended 60 years ago. A brutal 30-year war between the Corvathi Dominion and the Velchari Collective that destroyed entire star systems before both sides gave up from exhaustion. The Treaty of Silence. Instead of wanting peace, both species stopped fighting because there was nothing left. At least one Ethelgard died. A wartime dreadnought that drifted through space without rescue. Jake put his noodles down and opened the listing's detailed scan report. Few details in the report. It took the surveyor little time. Micrometeors and radiation had damaged a huge, angular hole for decades, as shown in exterior photos. Dark armor plating had turned mottled gray, like old and dead skin. Some parts of the outer hull bent inward, possibly due to weapons damage or thermal cycling. The rear engine nacelles were cold and dark. No M-waves, null heat signature. Lifeless, the surveyor wrote concisely. The vessel is not working. The hull is damaged in several places, and no usable weapon systems were found. The power core status is unknown, but it is thought to be empty. The hull material is worth about 40,000 credits after processing costs. The best way to get rid of it is to remotely dismantle it or control deorbit it into the nearest star. Jake reread that number. The scrap is worth 40,000 credits. This was a good haul for his small business. Not much, but enough to power the lights for 6 months. Enough for salvage tug repairs. He might be able to hire a second crew member to stop doing everything himself. However, 12 credits was the lowest bid. Nobody else wanted her. This indicated a catch. He rested his feet on the desk and rubbed his eyes. "What's wrong with you, old girl?" he muttered at the screen. Scrolling down to legal disclosures revealed the answer. Hidden in long, complicated sentences, full of bureaucratic language, was why the Ethelgard was worth less than a sandwich. The Corvathi Dominion claimed the ship as cultural heritage. Poor argument. No claim required. 20 years ago, the Galactic Salvage Authority warned that the Ethelgard was a Corvathi historical ship and that buyers should be aware of diplomatic issues. This scared off all the big salvage companies in the area. No one wanted to spend money cutting up a ship only to have the Corvathi show up with a legal team and fleet to retrieve it. Large companies had lawyers, but Corvathi had warships. Not worth the risk. Jake Morrow wasn't big business. Jake Morrow was one guy with a salvage tug, a broken tablet, and a history of bad money decisions. He grabbed his noodles, ate, and bid 12 credits. The confirmation arrived 3 days later. He now owned Ethelgard, a Tempest-class Corvathi dreadnought. You could call Lisa Chen his business partner. She handled books, contracts, and the constant creditors who knocked. She was 43, had short black hair, she cut herself with cargo scissors, and was one of the few people who could make any financial situation sound bad. She didn't blink for 10 seconds after Jake told her about the purchase. She said, 12 credits. Jake said 12 credits. Get a Corvathi dreadnought for Corvathi dreadnought with cultural heritage claim. A weak cultural heritage claim. Lisa closed her eyes and stroked her temples. I've been eating protein bars for lunch every day for 3 weeks because we can't afford real food. And you just bought a haunted alien warship, Jake stated. I bought a scrap haul worth 40,000 credits for 12. Good deal. Lisa, the deal is good if no one kills us over it. Nobody cares about this ship. The Corvathi haven't enforced a heritage claim in 15 years, so 12 credits. Lisa opened her eyes and looked at him with the same look she always gave him when calculating his plan's risks. Jake had seen that look often. He understood its small changes. This version said she suspected he was stupid but couldn't prove it. Okay, she said. When are we leaving? I've planned the route for tomorrow morning. At a normal burn, she's drifting 6 days. 6 days to get there and 6 days to get back, plus time to look at and cut. We're looking at a month. Yes, 1 month of food, fuel, and life support with the possibility that the Corvathi won't arrive. Yeah, Lisa took out her tablet to recalculate their budget. Jake saw red numbers scrolling up in her glasses. She concluded, we can do it. Just barely, if nothing goes wrong. Jake grinned. When did anything ever go wrong? Lisa didn't reply. The next morning, Morrow and Sons left Theta Station on Jake's salvage tug, the Resolute, their only asset. She was an older Hanford-class utility vessel that towed cargo containers between orbital platforms. Jake added cutting tools, a magnetic grapple array, and a small cargo bay that could hold 200 tons of processed scrap over time. She wasn't fast or pretty, and the engines rattled when pushed past 60%. She received payment. For the most, the 6-day trip to Sector 44 Echo was like any other deep space trip. Nothing happened. Long periods of silence. Only routine maintenance checks and silent meals while looking out the forward viewport at the starfield. Jake spent most of his time reviewing the few Corvathi dreadnought architecture sources to figure out how to break the Ethelgard into smaller pieces for easier transport. Bet Lisa added numbers, time after time, checking the angle to make this work, searching for the cause of its failure. The proximity alarm went off on day 6 in the morning. The pilot was Jake. He turned off the alarm and examined the sensors. It was huge at the scanner's limit. No vitality, 0 emissions. It was a large, cold shape moving slowly in the dark. Changed direction and enlarged the front camera's view. Jake's chest tightened when the Ethelgard appeared. She was huge. Nearly 2 kilometers of brutal buildings showed a species that built cathedral-like warships. Scare people, not just work. Present, even though it was dead, drifting, and eroded by cosmic forces for decades. The Ethelgard garnered attention. Her hull had armored plates stacked like scales of a huge deep-sea creature, forming ridges and valleys. She had dark, steel gun barrels on her sides. A fist-shaped bridge tower rose from the front. Jake focused on the damage. A huge wound ran from the middle to the stern on the port side. Something broke through the armor, exposing the compartments to the void. Melting and twisting the breech edges lasted a long time. Jake saw the open decks through the gap. The corridors and rooms were open to space like a body. Whatever hit her, hit hard. A long time had passed. That's her, Jake whispered. Lisa appeared behind him and viewed the screen. Her silence lasted a moment. That breach is huge, she said. The port side's structural integrity is coming down. Yes, we'll have to cut carefully. Jake, Lisa's voice changed. Be gentler. Look at the breach pattern. That's not random gunfire. It's a sustained beam weapon, probably from Velsh. Someone fired on her for a long time. She fought, she killed. They were silent as they stared at the damaged ship floating through space. Jake then took the thruster controls. Go say hi. The Resolute slowly caught up to the drifting dreadnought, paralleling it about 500 meters off the starboard side. The scarred metal Ethelgard filled the view at this distance, appearing to stretch forever in both directions. Jake put on his suit in the airlock while Lisa watched from the bridge. Standard first boarding procedures were easy to follow. For self-entry, magnetic boots, a tether line, a portable scanner, and a cutting torch. Jake had done this on abandoned cargo ships and mining platforms many times. He had never sailed on a Corvathi dreadnought. Good pressure check, Lisa said over his helmet. Come, tether is live. Cross now. Jake rode his bike through the airlock and void. At first he felt silence. It always did. No matter how many spacewalks you did, that first moment when the airlock closed behind you and the universe opened up in every direction never got old. The stars were too bright to see. Ethelgard was too big to be true. Nothing separated them. There was only cold, empty space. He powered up his magnetic boots and charged toward the dreadnought's hull. Lazily, the tether fell behind him. Crossing the gap took almost 2 minutes, and each meter made the ship bigger until it wasn't a ship anymore. It was seen. Metal continent in darkness. His boots stuck to the hull. The vibration went up his legs and into his chest, making him think he felt something. No sound, no shake. Another thing. Similar to recognition, like the ship saw him. Shaking it off, he walked. Ethelgard's exterior resembled a neglected museum. The armor plating looked diseased from years of micrometeor impacts. Due to star radiation, the dark metal had turned sickly gray. Jake noticed markings here and there. Over time, in exposure, painted Corvathi script symbols have almost completely faded. Despite not reading Corvathi, he took pictures of each with his helmet camera. About 300 meters from landing, he found an airlock. Corvathi airlocks were larger than human ones and designed for a species about 7 feet tall. Unpowered, locked exterior door. Jake used his cutting torch to fix the hand-opening mechanism. It took 20 minutes to open the outer door. The airlock chamber behind it was cold and dark. Jake entered and closed the door. No spirit, do not worry. He repeated it at the inner door. Jake Morrow entered the Ethelgard for the first time when the inner door creaked. The darkness enveloped him. His helmet lights cast too thin beams of light through a solid-feeling darkness. Air or airless space was still. No movement. A hallway wide enough for 3 Corvathi to walk side by side had high ceilings that disappeared into the dark above his lights. Dark conduits and access panels lined the walls. A thin frost covered the floor. Jake advanced. Magnetic boots, hitting deck plating, echoed through the ship like a heartbeat. He said, I'm inside. Despite no atmosphere, power, or gravity, the corridor appears intact and has no structural damage. Copy, Lisa said. The bridge should be forward and up about 12 decks on Tempest-class dreadnoughts. You're on deck 7, starboard midsection. That's a long spacewalk. You should go. Jake strolled through the Ethelgard's corridors like a cemetery. The dead ship echoed with every step. More empty darkness appeared everywhere. Corvathi ships were heavy and permanent, almost like buildings. Hallways were for more than walking. Ceilings and walls were curved and interconnected like cathedrals. Jake had never seen a ship like this, even frozen. But there was more. Something he couldn't identify. It pushed against his mind like a hand on his shoulder. The ship wasn't empty. It waited. The quiet wasn't just noiseless. Something else existed. He found the first body on deck 9. It was a Corvathi remnant. The vacuum kept the remains cruelly perfect. In a second monitoring station, the body sat at a console with its hands on the controls and its head tilted slightly forward, as if studying a readout that had gone dark 50 years earlier. The tall, angular Corvathi had long skulls and four-finger hands. Some said they were graceful in life. This one died like a statue. Jake lingered in the doorway, staring at the body. Lisa, he said, I discovered the crew. A break. Alive. No. Long dead. Vacuum preserved. Sitting at their station. Another break. How many? One so far, but if there is, there are probably more. Jake, we must notify the Galactic Salvage Authority before cutting up remains. If the Corvathi discover we have their dead, I know. He examined the corpse at its station, controlling with hands, with heads bowed, as if thinking or praying. This worker died on the job, keeping their station as the ship collapsed. They died at work. Things changed inside Jake. Something heavy and quiet. Let's continue, he said. Want to see the bridge? It took Jake almost 3 hours to reach the bridge. The path was difficult. His cutting torch couldn't pass through fallen bulkheads or sealed blast doors in several corridors. He had to return several times, finding other ways through maintenance shafts and ship vanes. His search yielded more remains. The vacuum kept 7 more Corvathi at their posts, in the same position as when the ship's air was sucked out. An engineer got stuck with his hands in an open access panel, while fixing something that couldn't be fixed. 2 soldiers stood in the hallway outside an armory with their weapons holstered, as if they never had time to fight. Decompression had scattered supplies across the infirmary. where a medical officer was bent over an empty exam table. Jake found 3 more in a mess hall. Everyone sat at the same table. Someone held something. Jake approached and saw a small, flat thing. Maybe a pic or a data chip. Important to you, worth keeping at the end. After finding each body, Jake stopped. His helmet camera captured it. He noted its location. He stopped and didn't say anything before continuing. Why he did it was unknown. Not the right move. It wasn't required, but since these people died doing their jobs, it seemed necessary. Jake, Lisa said after the 7th find, you've been in there almost 3 hours, and your oxygen is 60%. I know. Near the bridge, turn around and rest. We'll finish tomorrow. Show me the bridge, and I'll return. She didn't resist. She recognized the tone. Bridge of Ethelgard was cathedral. Only that word worked. The dome-shaped room was at least 40 meters wide and 20 meters tall, with dark display screens on the ceiling. Armored blast shields blocked a huge forward viewport from the command station's concentric semicircles. The Korvathi style of functional beauty, smooth curves, clean lines, and ordered purpose was used to design every surface, making even dead consoles look dignified. 12 were on the bridge. They manned their posts. All of them. The commander sat in the middle in a high chair. The officer rested his hands on the chair's controls. Not holding, resting. They seemed to have reconciled. Jake slowly crossed the bridge, lighting up the quiet stations with his helmet. He saw Korvathi scripted nameplates on some consoles. He photographed them all. Behind the command stations on the bridge, he found what he needed. Terminal for data core access. Every major warship had one, which connected to the ship's main computer, which stored logs, recordings, sensor data, and communications. The Korvathi called it memory well. Someone called it a black box. Jake kneeled and viewed the terminal. It died like everything else, but the physical connections remained. Several layers of armor protected the data core deep inside the ship. Something would be there if it had survived 60 years. Lisa, I found the data core terminal. The physical connections look good. If we can power it, we may get the ship's records. No, Jake, we're here to cut and haul. I know why we're here, Lisa, but there are dead people who stayed at their posts. Their families have descendants. Someone has been wondering what happened to them for 60 years. And entering a Korvathi warship's data core without permission could get us arrested, expelled from the salvage guild, or shot by the military. The Korvathi filed a cultural heritage notice and forgot about it. If they cared, they would be here. Lisa was quiet for a while. Jake heard her slow, steady breathing through the cum, like when she was thinking. Last she said, come back to the tug. We'll discuss. Jake surveyed the bridge one last time. 12 quiet people at their posts. At the commander, who held the controls. No one heard him say, I'll be back. Maybe to everyone. Night-long fighting. They ate reheated food and drank weak coffee in the Resolute's small galley. Lisa ran scenarios on her tablet. The main screen showed Jake's helmet camera footage of the Korvathi crew slowly cycling. This is the math, said Lisa. If we focus on salvage, we can strip the accessible parts in 3 weeks. If the hull material processes at normal rates, we should get 35 to 40,000 credits after transport and processing fees. That will keep us running for 6 months and pay off our debts. That's why we're here. I get math. We're salvagers. We cut ships apart and sell the pieces. What about the passengers? We notify the GSA of the bodies, and they'll send a team where the Korvathi will come. It's not our job, Lisa. The GSA recovery backlog is at least 18 months. The Korvathi have had 60 years to retrieve their people, but they haven't. That doesn't affect our finances. Jake got up and went to the screen. His video stopped on the mess hall image. All 3 Korvathi are at the table. The person holding the small item, what do you think that is? In their hands, Lisa watched the screen. No idea. A token. A data chip. I think it's a picture. Or whatever the Korvathi word for picture is. That person was looking at a picture of a loved one when they died. Jake, Lisa, these people had families, names, stories, and loved ones. For 60 years, no one has come to tell them what happened or say goodbye. It's sad, but it doesn't cover our docking fees. It doesn't. They were quiet. The screen showed rotating images. The bridge, the halls, people frozen at their posts. What are you really suggesting? Lisa asked. We take our time to get the crew records, personal logs, and anything else in the data core. Then we tell the GSA and Korvathi Dominion everything, giving them names and closure. What about salvage? We still salvage, cut, and haul, but we first take crew records to make sure these people aren't forgotten. That could delay the operation for weeks, which we can't afford, I know. Lisa lingered on him. She rechecked the screen. Korvathi in the mess hall with a small, valuable item in their frozen hand. If we do this, she said slowly, and the Salvage Guild pulls our contract because we took too long, we lose everything. The tug, the business, everything. Double quotes, yes, I know. You still want to? Yes, I do. Lisa closed her eyes. She rubbed her nose bridge. She inhaled deeply and exhaled slowly. Okay, she said, I need better coffee. They began Ethelgard's memory restoration the next morning. The first issue was power. They didn't know how to restart a Korvathi fusion core, and the ship's main reactor had been down for decades. Not all of the ship needed power, just enough power to run the data core access terminal and get the stored records. To connect the Resolute's auxiliary generator to the Ethelgard's starboard airlock. Jake ran a power transfer cable through the corridors like an umbilical cord between two very different creatures. Lisa configured their laptops for Korvathi data protocols, which was like connecting a toaster to a nuclear reactor. The formats didn't work. The encryption was new, and the hardware connections needed extra adapters, made from spare parts. Physically connecting to the data core terminal took 3 days. On day 4, they turned it. The terminal made a sound Jake could feel through the deck plating. A deep, low hum, like an empty church organ's first note. Korvathi text appeared on a dark background with green letters scrolling across it. From her Resolute desk, Lisa said, I'm getting a handshake. The data core works, but the index files are full of errors. There's a lot of data. Can you read it? Not directly. The encryption is like nothing I've ever seen. It has multiple layers and a different algorithmic structure. It's military grade. Outsiders shouldn't access it. Can you break it? I can try, but Jake, this is Korvathi military encryption, the galaxy's best. It could take weeks. Start with personal files and crew logs, which may not be as secure as tactical data. Lisa worked 2 days straight, taking 2-hour breaks to sleep while her algorithms broke Korvathi encryption. Jake kept mapping the ship's accessible parts and marking where they could be cut for salvage. He kept finding body parts. The second day yielded 40-7. On this ship, 47 Korvathi died and never returned home. Lisa broke the first layer at night on day 6. Jake. Her radio voice was sharp and excited. We can access the personal data partition, which contains crew files, personal logs, and communication records. Jake was on deck 14 photographing a game room. He walked to the bridge. See what? 312 people were on the crew. I have their names, service records, assignment histories, and personal files. Jake, they kept letters, recordings, and photos. Do something. A break. Jake then heard a voice through his helmet speakers. It spoke Korvathi, a musical precise language that sounded like wind chimes and thunder from afar. Jake knew how the words sounded but not their meaning. Quite warm, soft, close. He asked, what's that? Lisa's voice changed. Less noise. It's a personal audio log by crew member Ethel. Based on the context markers, it's a bedtime story for her daughter. Jake stopped. In the dark hallway of the dead ship, he listened to a mother read a story to a child light years away 60 years ago, like a storyteller. It stopped for effect and changed pitch for different characters. It used all the tricks that parents, human and alien, use to bring a story to life for a sleepy child. Jake closed his eyes. He heard his own breathing, the power cable hum, and a 60-year-old woman telling a story she never finished. Lisa said hundreds of these. One crew member wrote poetry. Another kept a cooking journal, recording recipes they wanted to try at home. There's a folder of music files. Someone was learning an instrument. They lived here, Jake said. Not just a warship, but their home. Yes, it was. Jake opened his eyes and saw the ship's worth 12 credits that the galaxy had left behind, frozen in darkness down the hallway. We won't scrap this ship. Lisa, a long pause. Jake, we discussed this. We need salvage money. I know what we need and what I'm looking at. This is a grave, not a pile of junk. I won't cut it with a torch. What now? I don't know, but we won't melt her. Lisa said nothing. Jake and she may have heard the same in that mom's voice. Maybe she did the math and realized some things didn't belong in a spreadsheet. Over the next week, they extracted all data from the core. 312 crew files. A lot of personal recordings, service records, duty logs. 20 years had passed before the last battle, which left the ship drifting and dead. Also, black box recordings. Last few hours, Jake played them on the Ethelgard's bridge in a chair across from the commanding officer's body, watching the green text scroll across the data terminal portraying the ship's final moments in clinical detail. No warning preceded the attack. A Velshari strike force ambushed the Ethelgard while she patrolled the disputed border. 3 heavy cruisers and a carrier fire at one target. The Ethelgard fought hard. Her weapons crews killed 2 cruisers before the beam weapon cut open her port. sighed and shot most of her atmosphere into space. Commander Carenthal ordered everyone to their emergency stations and sealed off the pressurized areas. But the damage was too much. Life support was failing. No communication was possible. Engines were absent. All on board knew the ship would not survive. Last in the black box was Carenthal's voice. Jake played it on his helmet speakers, alone on the dark bridge with the dead. The commander spoke calmly, as if he had accepted what was to happen and wanted to face it with dignity. Jake didn't understand the Corvathi words, but Lisa read and translated them aloud, cracking slightly. This is Carenthal, the Ethelgard's commanding officer. This is my last entry. The ship is lost. We can't be saved. I've ordered all crew to stay at their posts. We won't leave our ship. We won't run. We'll stay at our posts and face whatever comes with honor. To our families, know that we Jake lingered in the dark after the recording. He stood up, went to the commanding officer's chair, and gently placed his hand on the armrest next to Carenthal's frozen hand. He said, "We found you. I promise your name will endure." Salvage Guild sent a message on day 14. On the Ethelgard's engineering deck, Jake carefully wrote down the names of the personal lockers he found near the crew quarters. Each crew member's locker held small collections of personal items that told their life stories. Carved parts, crystals of data, a folded piece of cloth that could have been home. A vacuum had held small, delicate items for 60 years. Jake knew Lisa's voice was off when he heard it over the comm. Return to the tug. Jake Guild contacted us. He saw her sitting at the communications console, staring at the screen like when the numbers were bad. Halverson and Price, the area's largest salvage company, sent the message to the Galactic Salvage Authority with Jake copied. Lisa read to the GSA Regional Administrator. Sector 44 to 51. RE Lot, 7741. Corvathi Vessel Designation, Ethelgard. This company is officially complaining about the salvage lot's slow processing. Section 14 of the Salvage Operations Code requires Morrow & Sons to dismantle the building within 21 days. We respectfully request that the GSA review contracts and grant salvage rights to a qualified operator who can meet standard processing times. Jake sat down hard. Halverson, that bird, he's right about the timeline. Jake. Section 14 is obvious. After buying a salvage lot, you have 21 days to disassemble it. We haven't cut on day 14. We're improving. We receive crew records, which isn't crew records don't matter to the guild. They want paid to move process scrap through their facilities. Can they get the job? Lisa accessed the right salvage code on her tablet. Yes. If the GSA finds we missed the processing deadline without an extension, canceling our contract gives the lot to someone else. Halverson will be first. He'll melt her down without hesitation. Probably a week. He has the equipment and staff for this big job. 3 weeks would have stripped the Ethelgard to its hull and processed the scrap in less than 2 months. Jake got up and went to the window. Ethelgard was a dark metal mountain against the stars. Corvathi held a loved one's photo in a ship's frozen mess hall. How long do we have before the GSA responds to Halverson's complaint? Standard reviews take 7 to 10 days. But Halverson knows people. He can request a faster review. We might have 5 days. We must then argue. Due to crew recovery, we need a GSA extension. The GSA won't let Jake extend alien ship recovery operations. Corvathi oversees that. The Corvathi Dominion must officially request an extension. But they haven't responded to our ship inquiry messages in 20 years. Go over the GSA's head. We go public. Lisa regarded him. What do you mean? We report our findings. Crew members record person-specific logs. Story before bed. We prove this ship isn't junk to the galaxy. A memorial. We make it hard to melt her down. That could go wrong 100 ways. Jake. We could be on the guild's dislike list. Corvathi could accuse us of desecration. The media could report on people using alien remains for publicity. It might work. Or, they could see my vision. That we should remember them. Lisa was quiet. Then she said, another issue. Power. I said, what? We've powered the data core with the Resolute's backup generator for almost 2 weeks. That generator powered backup systems and emergency lights, not an alien computer core. Power draw has been rising, as I've noticed. The data core uses more power as we go deeper into the memory banks. Continuing at this rate will overload the generator in 4 days. Can we slow down? If we throttle the data core, we may lose unpulled files. Weak memory banks. The storage medium breaks. We lose more data when we switch off and on. Turning it off and on again could destroy everything. We haven't pulled 40% lowest layers, personal files, old logs, and your navigation history. Jake felt weighed down. Guild time is running out. Generator power is low. 40% of their lives are still in a dying computer. What if we divert Resolute life support power? Lisa regarded him. You want our life support cut off to power an alien databank? Not all, only unnecessary systems. Heat. How well water recycling works. Air filtering to the lowest safe levels. Jake, that means we're breathing old boot air. The cabin cools to 4 degrees Celsius without heating. I've done worse. Neither have I. I'd rather not. Please, Lisa, for more days. I only want that. We have 4 days to get the remaining records, then we'll figure it out. Lisa examined her tablet's numbers. She faced Jake. She watched the Ethelgar from the window. She said, I want a thicker blanket. Done. And real coffee. Not fake powder. I know you hide a stash. I'll get some. If air quality drops below safe levels, we turn it off immediately. No dispute. No dispute. Lisa altered power systems. The Resolute's cabin cooled within an hour. Half the lights were on. As the air recycler entered its basic mode, the air became stale and metallic, irritating Jake's throat. But the Ethelgard's data core hummed with new energy, and the files moved. Lisa offloaded the ship's data while Jake worked. He did it regularly. Every morning, he put on his suit, crossed to the Ethel, and spent 8 to 10 hours inside the dead dreadnought, documenting the compartments and gathering the crew's belongings. Personal lockers were hardest. Each was a glimpse into life. Velshan, a Korvathi, had small stones from each planet the Ethelgard visited. In a small box, they were polished and ordered. Tharkal, another crew member, stored letters. Each Korvathi printed dozens of them on a thin material instead of paper and folded and tied with a thin cord. Jake couldn't read them, but he could tell the handwriting changed throughout the collection. It became more confident and personal. Like the writer went from formal letters to intimate confessions over months. There was Thelvin's locker, the mother who recorded bedtime stories. Her locker held 3 items. Jake carefully stored a data crystal for study. A small carved animal figure was probably a kid's toy, Jake thought, and a pic. In bright colors, a child drew 3 people standing under a tree, building, or mountain on Korvathi paper, 2 tall and 1 short. Several people. Jake lingered over the drawing in his gloved hands. He said, Lisa, I need you to find descendants. What? Crew. People number 312. They had families, kids, parents. These people may still be alive. Maybe their kids or someone has waited 60 years to learn what happened to their loved one. Honestly, Jake, the Korvathi Dominion doesn't have an open border policy. Civilians can't see their records. We use diplomatic channels, or we find another way. But we do it. What resources? We run our life support systems and databank with the least power possible. The Guild's complaint could end our contract in days. We lack the funds and personnel to search the galaxy for missing people. We search for resources. How matters not. People should find them. Lisa sighed. She sighed because she was about to do something hard that her coworker usually got right. I'll see what I can do, she said. Lisa did 2 things while Jake slept in the Resolute's cold cabin, cozy in all their blankets. Her first letter was detailed and sent to the Korvathi diplomatic mission on Nexus Station, the closest Korvathi hub. She discussed the Ethelgard crew remains, personal belongings, and data core records. She sent the crew logs, which included Thelvin's bedtime story and drawing. She politely told the Korvathi what they had found and offered to share everything without making demands or accusations. Second, she wrote a unique message. She sent this to every independent news outlet and journalist in the sector database. Was shorter, more emotions. It described the Ethelgard and what they found inside and asked a simple question. 312 people died on this ship. They stayed put until the end. For 60 years, no one has sought them. A salvage company wants to melt the ship for parts. Does their story end there? She sent both messages and slept. By morning, the galaxy was paying attention. Meridian Station's small news site, The Deep Signal, responded first. The paper's editor, retired journalist Frank Torres, read Lisa's message and headlined it Forgotten Warriors, Human Salvage. Crew discovers lost Korvathi crew in derelict dreadnought. Frank had few followers. He had several thousand regular readers, mostly dock workers and independent traders who liked his straightforward reporting. However, one reader shared the story on the Galactic Network. Then someone else shared. Someone else appeared. Under 48 hours, the Ethelgard story spread like wildfire. Lisa watched the Resolute's communication console's message counts rise with satisfaction and fear. 3 news stations covered it. Someone created a tribute page for the Ethelgard crew. The Korvathi Cultural Group announced they had found the ship and requested its protection. Halverson was furious. He wrote Jake again on day 16. Mr. It was shorter and less polite. You gave media salvage lot details without permission, violating guild confidentiality. Please start disassembling within 48 hours or we will break the contract, impose guild sanctions, and sue you for interfering with salvage commerce. Not a deal. Jake read and deleted the message. You can't just ignore him, Lisa said. Watch me, Jake. He can do what he's threatening. If the guild punishes us, we'll close forever. This story will be too big to ignore by the time he gets sanctions approved. Honoring fallen soldiers won't get us in trouble with the guild. Not when the industry is watching. All your chips are on public sympathy. I'm betting most people feel something when they hear a mother read bedtime stories to her child. That feeling is worth over 40,000 scrap metal credits. Lisa watched him intently. She shook her head and resumed data collection. The Korvathi response on the 17th day wasn't what they wanted. Official Kelvis of the Korvathi diplomatic mission on Nexus Station signed the message in clear, formal English that sounded like professional translations. Your message about finding Ethelgard and her crew's bodies arrived. We reviewed crew records and personal items you sent us. The Korvathi Dominion values this discovery. During the Border War's final battles, the Ethelgard and her crew disappeared for 57 years. However, Section 9 of the Treaty of Silence states that all Border War military assets belong to the state that created them. The Ethelgard is subject to Korvathi law, so anyone who accesses her military systems, including data core records, without permission may violate the treaty. A diplomatic team will investigate and take control of the ship and bodies at your location. It should arrive in 12 days. Work on or inside the ship must stop immediately. Jake read the message 3 times. He said 12 days. Lisa agreed. Sending people, this is good, Jake. Coming for their boat. Their employees. Exactly what you wanted. They said stop. To stop work, yes, we still need 40% of the data core. 40% of their private records. They wrote, their journals, their lives. The Korvathi told us to stop. They haven't arrived. Lisa closed her eyes. Jake, the guild has complained. Halverson threatened sanctions. A media storm could worsen at any time. You want to defy a Korvathi Dominion order. To finish what we started, daily, those records worsen. Corruption increases with each power outage. If we wait 12 days for the Korvathi, we may not get the rest of the data. 40% of the crew will never tell their stories. The Korvathi could arrest us if they see us taking data from their warship, or worse. They could, however, they would have to explain to the galaxy why they arrested the humans honoring their dead when no one else would. He saw Lisa look at him differently when she opened her eyes. It wasn't mad. It wasn't math. More like awe, and possibly some fear. You'll do it anyway, aren't you? Yes, no matter what I say, pretty much. Lisa stood and approached the power console. She typed, "You're doing what?" Jake said, "Rerouting another 15% from life support to the data core. Will be effective against Korvathi troops. You have 12 days to get everything else. No need to waste them." Jake grinned. His smile hadn't been that since they arrived. "Lisa, don't think, just give me real coffee." Jake endured the worst 12 days of his life. It was freezing in Resolute's cabin. The thin, stale air had a bad taste that stuck to their throats. To save heating power, they wore thermal suits inside the tug, ate cold rations, and slept in shifts so someone was always watching data extraction. Jake worked up to 14 hours a day in the manually accessing secondary data nodes Lisa couldn't reach. Data became more fragile as they descended into memory banks. Broken sectors. Reads that failed. When opened, files fell apart. Scattering Korvathi lives into space. But they found valuables. A full correspondence between Rethkai and someone back home. 300 letters, in 2 years. Lisa's translation algorithm revealed parts of them. Battles over money. House repair plans. Discussion of pet names. The mundane events of a life lived across impossible distances. Lisa discovered that the ship's cultural officers' Korvathi traditional song recordings were no longer in any archive. The cultural officer kept them as a personal project to preserve fading songs. Handwritten margin notes in an engineering manual. Bug fixes and jokes. Discuss coworkers. The running commentary turned a dry technical document into a picture of a close-knit group of engineers who loved their work and each other. More Thelvan tapes. Talks and stories before bed. Unsent messages to her daughter. Motherhood reflections. Worries about war. Future hopes. A woman who was a warrior and a mother with grace. Beyond species. Jake listened to them while working, but he didn't understand. After Lisa translated the most important parts, they sat in the freezing tug reading words written 60 years ago by a woman who wanted to go home to her child. Lisa said, Shelvin was her daughter. Thelvin went to the Ethelgard at 6. The folder's last letter is for Shel. It's incomplete. It stops mid-sentence. What does it mean? Lisa watched her screen. When you're older and the stars don't seem so far away, I want you to know that every time I looked at them, I saw your Jake got up and went to the view. We have to find her, he said, as the Ethelgard floated outside in the dark, huge, quiet, and full of unfinished stories. Shelvin, daughter of Thelvin, probably in her 60s. She may be alive. I've been looking, Lisa said. Corvathy civilian records are private, but media coverage has enabled some things. Memory Keepers are a Corvathy cultural group I spoke to. They preserve border war deaths, stories. For years, the Dominion government has blocked their attempts to reach the Ethelgard, because the Ethelgard's last mission was secret. The Dominion wanted the ambush's details kept secret. Political shame, it seems. Adjusting the patrol route and giving orders. 312 people died because of Dominion command error, so they put it in a box and pretended the ship didn't exist. For 60 years. Hot and tight. Jake's chest, falsing, something beyond anger. The stark realization of an injustice that transcended species, politics, and star distances. 312 people died due to a mistake. The government that executed them erased them. Lisa, send everything to Memory Keepers. Everything. Every file, recording, and photo. Jake, the Corvathy government ordered us off. They're not classified military secrets. If we share classified military data with civilian groups, these include bedtime stories, love letters, recipes, and songs. Those are lives, and they deserve attention. Lisa pondered. After that, she nodded. I'll transfer encrypted. Uploading everything will take several hours. Do it. Jake returned to the Ethelgard while Lisa moved the data. He saved this for last. One ship part he hadn't seen. Crew memorial room. That Corvathy warships always had a place to remember. Memorial room for fallen soldiers. The Corvathy believed memory was the most valuable cargo, so they kept it in the middle of the ship and protected it with heavy armor, behind a strong door that took an hour to cut. He found it on deck 12. Jake stopped breathing when the door opened. A domed ceiling with thousands of tiny lights adorned the 15-meter-wide room. No, lights, crystals. The ceiling had fingertips, Corvathy memory crystals in a pattern that resembled the Corvathy homeworld's starfield. A large crystal formation sat on a raised platform in the middle of the room, lit from within. Names covered the walls. Hundreds, written on metal, in flowing Corvathy script. The names of all Ethelgard crew members since its commissioning. Jake could tell that newer names had been added over time because the carvings were done by different people. At the bottom of the wall were last names. 312. Final crew. Jake lingered in the memorial chamber. The ceiling crystals were dark, but when he shone his helmet light on them, they caught and scattered the light in tiny rainbow fragments, making it look like there were stars in the sky in this small, sacred room underground in a dead ship. I see you, he said, removing his glove and placing his hand on the wall alongside the names of people he had never met but felt he knew. All of you, I guarantee the galaxy will see you. Lisa had sent a single message to a few journalists, which had started a media storm that neither two of them could have predicted. The story of the Ethelgard had crossed species lines in a way that few stories ever do. It wasn't only people who were talking about it. Many Velshari news outlets were covering the discovery, with many people expressing complicated feelings about a ship that their ancestors had destroyed. Tharjan trade networks were talking about whether or not salvage law was fair. Even animals that had nothing to do with the border war were getting involved because the story was so universal. A mother reading a story to her child before bed. A crew that stayed on the job. A ship that drifted for 60 years while the galaxy forgot about it. Every species knew these things. Frank Torres at the Deep Signal had become the unofficial journalist of record for the story, and his readership had exploded from a few thousand to several million. He talked to Jake for a long time over a comlink, and the article that came out of it was called "The Man Who Wouldn't Let Them Be Forgotten." Jake didn't like the headline. He didn't want to be a hero. He was trying to do what was right, but the galaxy seemed to need heroes, and it had chosen him to be one, whether he liked it or not. The pressure from the public started to change the political scene. The Corvathy memory keepers used the information Lisa had sent them to start a public campaign asking the Dominion government to make the Ethelgard's records public and let the families of the crew finally find out what happened to their loved ones. The campaign gained traction quickly, fueled by the personal recordings and letters that had begun circulating on the galactic network. Thelvin's bedtime stories became very popular. Someone made a short documentary that went viral across species by putting them to ambient music. The sound of a Corvathi mother reading to her child became a symbol of everything the story stood for. Love that lasts beyond death. Memories that last even after being abandoned. And the small moments that happen even inside a warship's hull. The Corvathi Dominion sent out a new statement on the 23rd day. The tone was very different from the first message. The first message was formal and threatening, but this one was calm and careful, like the language of a government that knew the political ground was shifting beneath its feet. The Corvathi Dominion understands that a lot of people are interested in finding the Ethelgard and getting back the personal records of her crew. We thank Jake Morrow and Lisa Chen for their work in keeping these items safe, and we promise to honor the memories of the Ethel crew in the right way. The Dominion has given the go-ahead to make the Ethelgard's service record public and give the crew's information to their surviving family members because of new information. A diplomatic team is still on its way to the ship's location and will work with the current owners to make sure that the ship and the remains of her crew are treated with respect. Get along with each other. Jake read those words 3 times. They had been threatening to arrest them 3 days ago. They wanted to work together now. The media campaign worked, Lisa said. They can't be seen as the government that punished people for honoring their dead soldiers. How about Halverson? Lisa got the most recent news from the Salvage Guild. The guild made a statement 2 hours ago. They are putting all Ethelgard-related legal matters on hold until the diplomatic situation is worked out. Halverson is very angry. He has made 3 different appeals. Good, let him file. Jake, we still have a problem. The guild put the proceedings on hold, but they didn't throw them out. Halverson will get back to work as soon as the diplomatic situation is settled. And we still haven't done any salvage work. Our contract is technically broken. Then we need to make sure that the diplomatic situation ends in a way that makes the contract useless. What do you mean? I mean that the Ethelgard shouldn't be saved at all. No, not by us. Not Halverson. Not by anyone. She should be kept safe. She should be a statue. Lisa looked at him. A statue. You want to make a 2-kilometer-long dreadnought into a monument. Why not? She is already a memorial. We just need to make it official. Jake, do you have any idea what it costs to maintain a 2-kilometer vessel as a permanent monument? Just the structural reinforcement would cost millions of credits, plus regular upkeep, plus hiring people, and insurance, plus the talks between the Corvathi, the GSA, and everyone else to reach an agreement. I know, and we have 12 credits. We had 12 credits. We now have everyone's attention in the galaxy. Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but then she closed it. She looked at the communication console, where messages were still coming in faster than she could read them. Messages came in from journalists, historians, Corvathi citizens, human veterans groups, alien cultural groups, and people on a dozen different stations who had heard the story and wanted to help. You're going to crowdfund a monument, she said. I'm going to ask the galaxy to remember, Jake said. The money part will take care of itself. He was correct. Yes, it did. The Corvathi diplomatic team arrived on day 29. Their ship was a sleek, modern corvette that resembled a polished obsidian blade. Unlike the scarred Ethel, the corvette moved 300 meters to the left of the dreadnought and stayed there, casting a faint blue glow on its damaged hull. Jake and Lisa took them in the Resolute's small galley, which Lisa had cleaned for 2 hours. The diplomatic team had 3 The Corvathi diplomat who sent the first message, Kelvis, was tall, had silver-gray skin, and moved slowly and carefully like an older Corvathi. Jake recognized the Border War veteran's uniform on Drenkai. The second person, the third, was female. She claimed to be Shelvin. Jake could feel the deck moving. He grabbed the galley table edge. Shelvin was 63. Her eyes were big and bright, like all Corvathi eyes, and Jake could feel their depth when she looked at him. Her skin was dark gray, like an aging She was thin, almost weak, and moved carefully to conserve energy. Her father was the kid in photo. Because of the stories, Shelvin said, her mother disappeared to the Ethelgard when she was 6. Her English was clear despite an accent. My mom's tales. I forgot her voice. Jake believed he couldn't speak. Yes, you played them for the galaxy. Shelvin repeated. The galaxy played them for me. My daughter called me while I was making tea and said, Mom, you need to hear this. There she was. My mom. Story of the moon and sea creature. She told me that story every night before bed. Lisa cried. Jake could tell her shoulders were shaking as she pretended to check the cum panel away from the table. I spent 40 years asking the Dominion what happened to her, said Shelvin. They claimed the information was private. Accepting and moving on was their advice. They said my mother served honorably and I should be proud. No change in her voice. It was calm, clear, and awful. Was proud? I was proud always. But I wanted to know. I wanted her voice again. Now I do. She looked Jake in the eye and said thank you. From my heart, thanks for thinking of her. Jake spoke. It was rough and thick, but we found something else, he said. In her locker. Want to see? In the Resolute's small cargo hold, he carefully stored the Ethelgard crew's belongings in sealed boxes. He opened Sylvan's box. Carving of an animal, the data crystal, and the image. Sylvan grabbed the drawing with shaky hands. 3 people stood under the unclear shape. She looked at one short, 2 tall. She whispered, I drew this. I made this for her departing day. I forgot. Closed her eyes, she placed the drawing on her chest. In the small cargo hold of a salvage tug, Sylvan held a paper she had drawn as a 6-year-old kid, surrounded by sealed boxes of recovered artifacts. She was reunited with her mother after 60 years. No one spoke. No words could describe how full it was. After a while, Sylvan opened her eyes and stared at Jake. What do you plan to do with this ship? I want to keep her, Jake said. Fix her up. Not a warship. As a memorial, a place to honor and tell crew stories. First speech by Diplomat Kel. The proposal is complicated, Mr. Morrow. Ethelgard is Corvathi property. This size ship would require a lot of resources and cooperation from many people to maintain. That's yes I know. But Halverson could cut her up and sell her for scrap. Again, nobody remembers these 312 people. The military officer Drenkai spoke. His voice was deeper and richer than the others. I fought in border war, another ship, diverse involvement. I knew some good soldiers. Their loss saddened us. We were furious when the government hid records. We appreciated what you did. He stopped and regarded Kelvis. Jake couldn't read but felt the Dominion will support the preservation. Kelvis said, we'll offer support and expertise. We can't do it alone. An unstable political situation exists in the Dominion. Declassification has raised uncomfortable questions about wartime commander decisions. Some in our government want the Ethelgard gone without a word. Jake, then we keep her. We make ignoring her difficult. The following week, Ethelgard restoration began. Jake's public appeal received more than he or Lisa expected. Credits came from across the industry, from individuals, businesses, governments, and groups. Veteran groups donated building materials. One Velshari engineering company representative said they did this out of a debt of conscience. Tharjan offered to transport supplies and people to the site. Jake and Lisa had to manage a much larger project than usual. Lisa used the same care and attention to detail as her accounting, creating spreadsheets, schedules, and coordination plans that kept the growing business afloat. Jake physically led groups of volunteers from different species to fix the Ethelgard, a difficult task. Starting with the bridge, Sylvan suggested it. The second day, she boarded the ship with Jake and walked through the dark halls with such respect that everyone stopped talking. She lingered in the doorway after reaching the bridge and seeing the 12 figures at their posts. Clean it, she advised. Respect them. They chose to stay here. Workers cleaned by hand, no machines. System automation is absent. People in Corvathi meticulously cleaned and polished each station. Clean and repair the consoles. Carefully redoing the nameplates, writing with a Malakita bonding compound restored their shine. Body stories differed. Corvathi funerals were complicated and personal. Jake Shelvin and Drenkai devised a Corvathi-compliant plan to honor the crew's sacrifice. Documenting, photographing, and identifying each body used data-core crew records. The Corvathi carefully removed them from their stations and placed them in their preservation capsules one by one. Everyone but one. Carenthal, the CO, stayed on the bridge. Drenkai and the Corvathi Dominion supported Shelvin's decision. The commander who ordered his men to stay put would stay put. After reassembling and cleaning his console, a dedicated energy cell lit it up in amber. He stayed, Shelvin said. He should always be. Velshari engineers and a team performed most restoration technical work. The whole breach mattered most. In shifts, the Velshari team used special tools to bond with the original Corvathi alloy to close the massive wound their ancestors' weapons had made. After sealing the last section, Corvathi, humans, Velshari, and others who helped stood silently. Work on the ship was difficult and time-consuming. Lisa's master plan divided the restoration into steps. Starting with the bridge and memorial chamber and working through key compartments. The goal wasn't Ethelgard operation, to ease her life, to fix enough systems to maintain atmosphere, lighting, and low gravity so people could walk through her halls without spacesuits. The Corvathi engineering team solved the power problem by installing a smaller reactor in the Ethelgard's engineering section. It was small compared to the ship's original power plant, but it powered the lights, life support, and memorial systems. The reactor turned on, and the lights flickered for the first time in 60 years while Jake was on the bridge. It started slowly, and then all at once, low-deck plating hum. A new warmth was in the air. Then light appeared. The overhead panel's soft amber light gave the bridge a golden glow that made it feel alive instead of frozen. The consoles displayed the restoration team's memorial displays instead of operational data. Each station displayed a crew member's service record, photo, and a brief excerpt from their personal files. I like this quote. A letter line, a song line. Carenthal Station displayed his final words. Ethelgard did not fall. We lost her. Her name endures. Jake viewed the memorial displays, soft lights, and the commanding officer's chair's warm amber glow from the restored bridge's center. Lisa said, "We did it." Next to him, her voice was heavy. "We did it, Jake." Jake said, "We're alive." But he smiled. Restoring the memorial chamber was the priority. Jake discovered Korvathi memory technology in the sealing crystals during his first exploration. Each crystal stored a lot of data. The ship's secondary memory system was a light-encoded backup of the data core. Korvathi engineers turned the crystal array back on, changing the memorial chamber. Sealing lights were on. The data in each crystal illuminated thousands of tiny points of light in the shape of the Korvathi home stars. Deep blue light from the raised platform's main structure filled the room. Like moonlight. Voices from crystals. After moving the data core's personal recordings to the crystal array, the memorial chamber's acoustic system played them back as a soft murmur. 312 voices singing, laughing, telling stories, reading letters, and leaving messages for loved ones they would never see again. The voices blended to create a sad but beautiful sound. Shelvin entered the restored memorial chamber first. She slowly moved to the middle of the room and stood under the glowing ceiling, filled with ghostly voices. She tilted her head back to watch the lights, and silver tears fell from her face. Her mother read her a bedtime story about a sea creature and the moon in clear, warm, close voices. 40-3 days after Jake and Lisa first boarded the ship, the Ethelgard Memorial was officially dedicated. More than 300 people from a dozen different species came to the ceremony. They came in ships of all kinds, from diplomatic cruisers to personal shuttles. The area around the Ethelgard was filled with a small fleet that would have looked funny next to the huge dreadnought if it hadn't been such a serious event. Jake had been ready for the important people. A high-ranking cultural minister from the Korvathi government had come. The Galactic Salvage Authority sent someone to officially change the ship's status from salvage lot to protected monument. Several government officials from around the world had come because they wanted to be part of a story that had captured the public's imagination. Jake didn't expect the families to be there. Lisa and the memory keepers had been looking for the descendants of Ethel crew for weeks. The Korvathi Dominion had opened their civilian records to help with the search because people were angry about it. They had found and contacted each family one by one. There were 312 crew members, and 287 of them had surviving family members. They showed up for the dedication. A lot of them, but not all of them. More than 100 Korvathi civilians traveled to Sector 44 to see the ship where their parents, grandparents, siblings, and partners had lived and died. Jake stood by the main airlock and welcomed them as they came on board. Each family got a sealed box with their loved ones' personal items that had been taken from their locker, as well as a data crystal with all of their crew members' personal files on it. He saw his daughter hold her father's service medal for the first time. He saw an old man get a pile of letters from his brother that he had written to him 60 years ago but never sent. He saw a young woman, not even 20, listen to the voice of a grandmother she had never met sing a lullaby that her mother had always hummed but didn't know where it came from. Every time they talked, it felt like an earthquake, a small change in the emotional landscape that spread out and linked to all the others, until the total effect was something huge. Shelvin was the main guide for the families. He led them through the restored corridors and told them what had happened to the ship and its crew. She led them across the bridge, where Carenthal sat at his station for what felt like forever, and she told them what the commanding officer said before he died. She led them to the memorial chamber, where the voices of their loved ones floated among the crystal stars, and she told them about Jake. "This man bought our ship for 12 credits, she said, standing in front of a group of Korvathi families in the memorial chamber. The Ethelgard had been forgotten by the galaxy. The government we live in buried her. But this person looked at a rusty old car and saw our people. He heard our parents, brothers and sisters talking from inside the silence, and he wouldn't let them go unheard." She looked at Jake. who was standing at the edge of the group and trying very hard not to break down. We have a word among the Corvathi, Thalvin. It means the person who remembers the names of the dead. It is the greatest honor we can give to someone who is not related to us. She walked across the room and put her hand on Jake's heart. Jake had heard of the Corvathi gesture, but he never thought he would get one. It meant being recognized. Family, the recognition that there was a bond that went beyond species, language, or the huge distances between stars. Jake Morrow Shelvin said, "You are Thalvin, you carried our names when no one else would, and we won't forget." The room was quiet, except for the soft murmur of 312 voices coming down from the crystal stars. Jake put his hand on top of hers. He couldn't talk. He didn't have to. There were some things that didn't need words at all. The restoration of Ethelgard caused political turmoil over the following weeks. Halvorson fought as he left. The GSA's conversion of the Ethelgard from salvage lot to protected monument violated his commercial property rights. So he sued. His lawyers claimed that Morrow & Sons had swayed public opinion to avoid salvage duties and that the memorial effort was a way to make an asset worth more than they could process. Much media coverage of the case split public opinion, making Jake feel good and bad. Most supported preservation. However, a vocal minority called the precedent risky. The salvage industry would collapse if any operator could claim historical significance to avoid their duties. Nobody could afford to keep ships safe or cut them, so they rotted in space. Jake acknowledged its validity. Jake attended the GSA hearing at Nexus Station. Lisa oversaw the Ethelgard's restoration, while Jake took a shuttle to the station in his only clean clothes, which Lisa had pressed with a flat cooking pan because they didn't have an iron. The hearing room was large and formal, with tiered seating for spectators and a raised panel for GSA commissioners. Halvorson was with a group of expensive suited lawyers. No attorney represented Jake. He owned himself. The first 2 hours were dull and technical. Halvorson's lawyers carefully used rules, precedent, and financial projections. They argued that the Ethelgard salvage rights were legal and that the reclassification was wrong. Jake stood up, walked to the podium, and placed a small device when his turn came. He said, "I'd like to play something before I say anything," pushing a button. The hearing room was filled with Thalvin's voice, the sea creature moon story you read before bed. A warm, soft voice filled the formal space with power no legal argument could match. Jake let it play 30 seconds. "That's the voice of a woman named Thalvin," he said. "She was an Ethelgard police officer. She was mother. Due to her work schedule, she recorded her daughter's bedtime stories. The ship attacked her post, and no one found her for 60 years. He faced the commissioners. He faced Halvorson. He regarded the audience. Mr. Halvorson is right about one thing. Disregarded the salvage schedule. Starting the Ethelgard cut took 21 days. Breaking salvage code section 14. After getting on that ship and seeing 312 people sitting at their stations waiting for someone, I thought their stories were worth more than their metal." Paused. "I know that's not how the salvage business works. I know emotions can't run a business. I'm not requesting rule changes. Please realize that sometimes rules don't apply. The Ethelgard is unusual salvage lot. She's grave. Memories of her. People almost melted her voices because they thought they were worthless." He faced the lead commissioner. "I bought that ship for 12 credits because nobody else wanted it. I found something inside her worth more than the local scrap metal. Met people. I found their tales." A mother spoke. "I ask you, not as a salvage operator or businessman, but as a person, to preserve those stories." No noise in the hearing room. Head Commissioner Admiral Chen, unrelated to Lisa, stared at Jake. Then she looked at the other commissioners. She turned and said, "Mr. Halvorson, want to respond?" Halvorson rose. He was big with hard eyes and a nice suit, but he didn't become the biggest salvage operator by being sentimental. Jake received a mixed look of anger and something else. Halvorson said, "There is a reason for the rules." Jake couldn't pinpoint it. Without consistent enforcement, the salvage industry fails. If we prioritize emotional appeals over contract obligations, we set a bad example that could destroy salvage law. He ceased. His expression changed. A crack in the hard exterior, humanish flash. "But," he said, "I have a girl. I would want someone to do what Morrow did if they found her voice on a dead ship." He consulted his lawyers. They regarded him. Returning to the commissioners, he said, "We are dropping the lawsuit. I'll cover legal fees. Consider it a memorial gift." The hearing room exploded. Commissioners demanded order. Sitting, Halvorson stared at the table like a man who had done something he didn't understand. Jake stood at the podium and felt the ground for the first time in weeks. Halvorson appeared in the hallway after the hearing. "Thank you," Jake said. Halverson stared at him with hard eyes. Don't think. I still think you're stupid. There are good reasons for the salvage code, and your actions could have been disastrous, but it didn't. No, it didn't. Halverson stopped. Pre-bedtime story. That was real. Everything was. Halverson nods. From his jacket pocket, he took a credit chip. Jake received it and asked, "What's this?" Jake asked, "How much?" 100,000 credits. For Memorial Fund. Don't get emotional. This is a tax break, not compassion. Jake took the chip. Get it. Halverson turned and left. End of hall. He looked back. Morrow. Yeah. Call me first the next time you buy a broken down car for 12 credits. My help will ease things. He vanished around the corner. The credit chip in Jake's hand made him smile. 6 months later, the galaxy's first interspecies memorial monument, the Ethel, opened. He moved her from her drift path in Sector 44, Echo, to a stable orbit around a quiet gas giant in a neutral system because it was in the galaxy's center and near trade routes. The Korvathi engineers installed a compact reactor-powered station-keeping system to keep the Ethelgard in orbit for centuries. Cleaning and fixing the ship's exterior hadn't polished it. Micrometeor scars, radiation, bleaching, and a patched hull breach showed the ship's trauma. The Ethelgard still looked like a troubled warship. Her running lights were on, soft amber points that showed her outline in the darkness and reassured passing ships she was alive. Not anymore. Within, things were different. Open spaces became a museum and memorial that drew people from across the sector after restoration. With Cairnthal at his eternal station, the bridge was intact but lit and warm, and the displays told the crew's stories. Visitors could stand under crystal stars and hear the dead in the memorial chamber, the most moving part of the monument. A few crew quarters had been renovated, and others were shown as they were when occupied. Visitors could see people's belongings displayed in a meaningful way and realize that a warship was a home by walking through their rooms. The ship's documentation center displayed the entire crew record archive. Families could view every letter, recording, and photo of their loved one. Memory keepers, volunteers, and a rotating team of Korvathi and human archivists worked there. The inauguration drew over 1,000 people from the Korvathi Dominion, Velshari Collective, Galactic Salvage Authority, and other groups and species. Galactic Network viewers numbered in the millions. Jake looked out at the crowd from the Ethelgard's bridge podium. Wearing Lisa's new jacket, he stated, "I'm not going to give a long speech. A worker who fixes things, not a politician. Let me say this," pointed to the bridge around him. On the controls, at stoplights, seeing Cairnthal sitting 6 months ago. The Galactic Salvage Authority catalog listed this ship as Lot 7741. She had 12 credits. He would cut, melt, and use her parts for a project. No one wanted her. No one remembered her. Nobody cared. On this ship, 312 people cared about everything. Their duty was serious. Cared about each other. People waiting at home worried them. The end didn't scare them away. They faced it together from their posts. As a hero, I didn't buy the Ethelgard. She was cheap, so I thought I could sell her for more. True. Something changed when I got on this ship and saw these people waiting at their posts. I understood that this ship's value was not her metal, due to her residents, their tales, in their voices, their lives. He looked at Shelvin crying in the front row. A mother recorded bedtime stories for her daughter on this bridge. She never told them at home, but her daughter heard them 60 years later, because someone remembered. Someone didn't want silence to win. He inhaled. Most of the cold, big galaxy doesn't care about us. Anyone, humans, Korvathi and Velshari, are tiny voices in a huge silence. We needn't agree. We can choose to listen. Remembering is our choice. We can honor our ancestors and keep their voices heard. That decision preserves the Ethel, not for politics, money, or tech. Because a dozen species saw this ship and desired to remember her crew. No amount of scrap metal can buy that. He left the stage. The crowd applauded for a long time. Jake and Lisa were alone on the Ethelgard's observation deck after the ceremony. When the important people left and the cameras stopped rolling, the viewport showed the gas giant as a painted marble in the dark. Beyond it, stars stretched out in all directions. "Well," Lisa said, "from running a two-room salvage operation with 12 credits to building the first interspecies memorial monument, things turn out funny. We're still poor. The Memorial Fund maintains the monument, but Morrow and Sons are 4 months late on docking fees." Jake chuckled. "Some things never change. Halverson called yesterday. He offers us a deal. Legitimate salvage, standard terms, no politics." "You're kidding not," he stated. "Someone needs to keep us working so we don't get any more ghost ships." Jake grins. He watched the stars and imagined a mother reading her child a sea creature and moon bedtime story. A child's picture of 3 people under a tree came to mind. He imagined a commanding officer at the controls, being peaceful. Lisa, yeah. Do you think we chose well? Lisa regarded him. Lisa took his hand, surprising him because she never did. Jake, she said, the only thing we did. They stood in the quiet of the restored ship, watching the stars as the Ethel guard drifted in her gentle orbit with her lights on. Voices, singing, and name finally remembered. The galaxy runs on money, on profit margins, and on cold calculations of how much something is worth when you break it down to its raw materials. But there are things in this world that you can't weigh or measure with, or, a name said softly in the dark. A light that had been off for decades comes back on. A daughter hears her mother's voice for the first time. The Ethel guard taught us something that no other species in the galaxy had ever really understood. That the real value of something is not what it is made of, but what it meant to someone, and as long as there is one person who is willing to remember, nothing in this universe is ever really gone. The stars don't remember, but people remember. That's what makes us dangerous, more than our weapons, our technology, or our stubborn refusal to die. We remember, and we won't let the dead be forgotten. And her lights are still on out there, floating among the stars. Someone remembered her name.